Hello and good evening. I'm just fiddling with everything here. Welcome to Open Minds Chat Show Live. It's Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. in the UK. I have a returning guest to the show and someone I class as a dear friend, a buddy, a girlfriend, as the Americans say. Welcome, April, to Open Minds Chat Show Live.
Thank you for having me. And I apologize of the setting right now because we are having our housework done. So I had to do this in my living room.
That's absolutely fine. We're not worried about your environment. We're just, because you're on the show, it's all good.
Okay.
Now, April, I titled the show tonight, The Ancient Gift, Ghosts and the Paranormal. So, but before we get there to your podcast and our discussion, for anyone that is not aware of you or didn't catch you on the shows before, could you give just a brief bio of who you are and what you're about?
Well, I am a mother of 5. So that's the first thing I always identify as. Grown children and 2 grandchildren, 1 on the way. So 3 coming soon. I'm a world traveler. I've traveled to a fair amount of places in the world. I am a college student graduating with my bachelor's in the next few months. And I will be going on to my master's in paranormal studies. I haven't really decided what discipline quite yet within that realm to go for. I'm also an author. I'm trying to put the finishing touches right now on a book I wrote, started years ago. And that book is interesting because it parallels current events in a way that I never thought I, imagined it would, because it's a fictional book with kind of, I don't want to pigeonhole it as a Harry Potter or Chronicles of Narnia, but it's told in that sci-fi fantasy adventure kind of way, but the message of the book aligns very much to current events that are going on. So it's an educational read, and it's also a truth read. Truth.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah. And also, so leading from that, there's a segue. You have, should I say, an up and coming podcast. You're coming new to podcast creating, The Ancient Gifts. So I'm so excited, looking forward to this. So could you give us a sort of a brief description of what this podcast is about, because for the audience?
Well, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, is I'm tired of hearing all the lies from everywhere else. I'm a truth seeker, and I want to approach everything I do with integrity and truth in my heart. And so I have developed a platform where I will be approaching any subject that I want to explore and unpack in such a manner that I'm going to be bringing in all facets that I can possibly, either think of or manage to get on the podcast. So in other words, let's give me any subject. Just give me a subject.
The ancient gods.
Ancient gods, great. So now specifically, I'm going to go with Egypt, okay? Because that's a great way to go, because a lot of people are familiar with Egypt, right? So I would get obviously an Egyptologist, an old school Egyptologist, and a current younger Egyptologist. I would get an archaeologist, a geologist. I would get somebody hopefully somebody like, let's say, I don't know, Graham Hancock, that's been to Egypt so many times, and he's explored and climbed all the pyramids, and he's a wealth of information. Not saying he would do my show, but I'm saying somebody like him, right? Yeah. We would all come together on a round table panel, and we would unpack, what those ancient gods mean, and maybe even somebody from the ancient alien realm, right, where they viewed the ancient gods, so to speak, as ancient beings from other dimensions or interdimensional travel or planetary travel. And we would take that subject and we would pack it bit by bit. And I'll have 3 standard questions that I ask, and I will give each guest a certain amount of time. And then after that kind of stops as far as that portion of the show, then we will all join in a mutual conversation about it.
I'm with you. Sounds fascinating. I do hope you bring up the Greek gods, because I have a love of them. and even the Roman gods, which were the Greek gods. So I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, and also, there are many people now, not just from the scientific or academia, but there are many, like, normal people that have experience and have an input into this topic as well. I mean, yourself included, when you was on the island of Greece. There's a spiritual aspect to this, and I think that should be brought in. I know it will be with you, and I don't really hear that anywhere else. All I hear is like, because obviously back in the day, because I'm slightly older than you, when I studied mythology, the gods, I would either hear they're either ET or they're the gods or the demigods, but there was never nothing raised about the spirituality of it. Why were they here? What were they doing? How did it affect humanity? So I am so looking forward to your podcast. I can't wait.
Well, there's no coincidence that the Romans took off from the Greek gods, and the Greek gods have a lot of similarities to the Egyptian gods, and the Egyptian gods have Egyptian, pyramids and things have a lot of similarities to, the Mexican gods and pyramids, the Mayan, the Inca, the Aztec. So there's no coincidence that no matter where you are in the world, if you go back in prehistory, antiquity, ancient history, you're going to find a lot of parallel similarities.
Absolutely.
So that's another thing I'd like to talk about. So it's just a way of looking at this from a multiple perspective of everybody that is involved in that field and can lend some kind of credence or validity to that subject, and also lay people. I'm an expert, so I mean, I love to learn about these things. So I think from a layman's perspective, I will be asking the questions of uneducated people in that realm as myself. Well, what does this mean? And okay, so you read hieroglyphics. So what does this passage translate to? And then you could ask somebody else.
No, I agree. I said I can't wait. I mean, when the gods come up, I mean, the connection to the Nordic gods, to Ireland, my ancestors, and back in the day there was no telephones, there was no internet, and they weren't supposed to have traveled anywhere at all. Obviously they did, and the similarities from opposite sides of the world, these gods with very similar traits, what powers. I mean, that is something that not many people tend to go into today, and I think it's been pushed to one side. So your podcast, The Ancient Wisdom, I believe will bring a fresh and more truthful approach and perspective.
If you look at my logo, the giving hands is a symbol of gift. The crystal ball, the oracle, the orb is a symbol of enlightenment, right? And the Kundalini symbol in the middle with the pineal pine cone in the middle is our ability as humans to tap into that realm, or that world. We're divinely designed to do so, but we're blocked and clogged. And I think that's a lot of what's going on in the world right now that we're seeing, is because we're not tapping into that part of our being, our essence, our soul, which is basically what my book is about as well. So it's kind of interesting. Like it's funny when you get into this, I like to say realm, or, and you talk to mutual people like yourself, and you find that everything that's happening now in what current times is we have a reality. But if you talk to people like you and you're having a completely different consciousness experience than I am, you're in the UK, you do your thing, I'm here, I'm doing my thing in Colorado, right? But it's so overlapping and interconnected. There's no denying that. So it's very, very interesting that no matter how much you try not to see the connections, you can't help it.
You can't help it. It's not just a connection, it's a familiarity of knowing between, like, myself and you and others. It's a familiarity that of something is there. And I've been noticing recently, looking at certain podcasts that are out and shows, or even some YouTube things, there is like a theme that is coming out every so often from the collective. And that's, I don't believe in coincidences. There's synchronicity for you. And, you know, the ancient wisdom, which is, I mean, come on, that's an umbrella. That's no pressure on you, by the way. That's going to cover, no pressure on you, no. It's going to cover so many areas. I mean, so could you name some of the areas? I mean, I'm hoping there's going to be out like the Oracle of Delphi and psychic mediums, and what other areas will you cover?
I mean, I was on a show last night, and I said this is the same thing at the end of the show. Hopefully, I can give my email so people can contact me if they have any ideas. But I'm right now willing to entertain any idea or suggestion. So I encourage people, if they do have an interest and they,
I'm on my emails now on the phone.
To send me that. But like, I'm going to take something that's not paranormal, and I'm gonna say suicide.
Yeah.
Okay. So, because you know, one of my other big endeavors is the nonprofit that I've started in honor of my late brother. So, this topic of suicide. Now, why would I cover that? What possible benefit would that be to a show like The Ancient Gift that is centered around paranormal, right? But if you think about it, suicide is a bridge between life and death, right? It's an existential question of, do I want to live or not live? And as a survivor of somebody who was close to me who completed suicide, I can tell you that the fallout and devastation of that is so immense that it not just shatters your world, but when it comes back together, your world, it shapes it. So I would like to approach this from an archaeologist standpoint in history, like different civilizations, what they thought about suicide, you know, why anthropologists, psychologists, medical doctor, and clergy, especially Abrahamic religions, get their take. How does the church, you know, let's say the Methodist, how do they view suicide? How does Islam view suicide? How does Judaism view suicide? So collectively, you get all of these points in reference from history and clinical, and then you have somebody who survived a suicide attempt, which I have, and then you have, like myself, has also survived somebody who has taken life, and I will get other people to talk about that, and you unpack that in a way where you're taking this awful word, the mere mention that clears a room, or at least makes people shift in their seat and get really uncomfortable. And you take the power out of that word, because if somebody is struggling with suicide iterations, and you do have firsthand accounts of somebody like myself who's attempted and survived, and I'm talking openly about it, then you're taking the power away from the word, and you're giving them, hopefully, the ability to say, you know what, I'm not alone, and I need to make a phone call, or I need to go somewhere and get some help, you know. So my intention on that is to, it's almost like decriminalizing, you know.
I hear you. No, I hear you, April. I think it needs to be decriminalized. As you're aware, I attempted suicide. Sometimes I think I'm still a ghost. I don't know, but hey ho.
No,
I'm not in the film The Sixth Sense. But always the thing that never, for me, I've never seen it addressed in that, is I've seen the judgment. I've seen it from Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and from very ignorant people. That isn't a religion in itself, I think now. However, is these so-called professionals who have never attempted suicide. So firstly, I'd say, well, how are you going to advise me or tell me if I'm right or wrong?
Right.
Rather someone who'd attempted it and coming in. But because everyone attempts it for varying reasons. And that's not even taken in consideration. It's just condemned and criminalized. Obviously, we know from the church, not too long ago, if you committed suicide, it was either hidden. So
when you say the church, do you mean the Catholic Church?
The Catholic Church, and the other. Well, Christian is Catholic. Catholic is the two different roads of Christianity, should I say then? Even though there's about 212 now. But the fact is, go back, I don't know, 100 years, whenever it stopped, but you couldn't even be buried in the ground, if you committed suicide, you were a criminal and treated equal to. So we've gone
That's
past.
why they call it committed, and now the proper term is completed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go, completed.
Yeah.
So that is by these so-called professionals and religious dogmatic orders, that was their control. But no one's addressed, and I know you're going to address it, is to look at what pushes a human being to that point.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, and I don't want to make the whole show about this, but I will quickly say this: with all the reading I've done and my personal experiences with suicide, I've actually had 2 siblings die of suicide. So, and my mother attempted multiple times. So it is chemical, hereditary, and some you are born with it somewhat. And then there are obviously, like, let's say the stock market crash of the 1920s. There's a lot of people who lose their lives because they lost everything. So there is also environmental reasons, right? They suffer that kind of trauma and they want to end the pain. So, and I'm going to leave it there for now. But and I had something in my head, and now it's gone. Oh, I know. You were talking about how the church views it as a criminal act and how we have stigmatized that word so much that it, like I said, clears a room and makes people shift their seat. If you look at Japan, ancient Japan, it was a rite of passage. It was an honor to commit harakiri. So my point being is, like, it's about perception. And isn't that reality itself?
Yes.
100% perception.
I think that's brilliant. We'll move along. But however, anyone in the audience that does need any support on mental health or has any suicidal thoughts, in the UK, the numbers are out there. They're quite common. You can just Google. There's many different organizations, and I'm sure they are in the USA, April.
Oh, yes. There's a U.S. Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you're a veteran, you can call the VA. And the other thing I want to say, that's kind of impersonal, reach out to a friend, a colleague at work, a relative, go walk in nature, go, whatever is driving you to that point. And by the way, Spirit's with me right now because I've got goosebumps all the way from like my neck all the way down. So I feel like my brother's here. So, but reach out, because it usually is a 20-second decision. Like, you decide to do it, and within 20 seconds you're gone.
Yeah.
If you can shift that few seconds. And have the strength. And I know whoever you are, wherever you're out there, if you're listening to this and you're at that point, I know what that vacuum abyss of darkness feels like. Trust me, I've been close to it so many times. Reach out and just pick the phone up and just call somebody that you know and say hi. That little tiny bit of human contact reminds you why you are needed in this world.
Absolutely.
I'll leave it there, though.
We'll leave it there. So I am looking forward to all the episodes of your podcast. I just really can't wait, because I know it's going to be so diverse and so different and so informative on many topics.
Well, thank you.
Oh, no, you're welcome. However, we're going to move along now because, as you know, I'm starting a new podcast myself, coming up soon.
I can't wait.
No, because you're going to be on it. I've read yours today. I started to read the emails. I am blown away. And the topic of that is ghost stories, waking the dead ghost stories, and obviously any paranormal experiences. It's not just exclusive to spirit or ghost stories. But for me, it's why this has come up, and it's coming from the beings, so to speak, in one way, is at the moment we're all, it's like, for my truth, I speak, it's a realization. In the past, we've separated everything in different boxes. This is, Bigfoot. This is spirit. This is ET. This is that. This is, and when in fact, the realization has come to many, it's all under one umbrella. It's all one thing. And you cannot exclude. So, for example, I have never seen a Bigfoot. I cannot say it doesn't exist. Okay, just because I haven't experienced it. I don't think they live in the UK. It's just USA that they live. I'm sure they do. That was a hint. If you do, don't come close. But seriously, there are many aspects under this umbrella. And through also, like, let's go first to spirits. We all know how when spirituality come into play, really heightened in the Victorian time, it wasn't long after the church took control. And the only way it could be recognized if the church organized it, regulated it, and gave it 7 principles. And there you go.
And collected 10% of your money.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
let's not forget.
Let's not forget that part. So, and then all the other ones as well have either been commercialized. I see these paranormal, whatever. I mean, really silly stuff. They go into dark places. Not all of them. And they cuss the spirit world, other energy beings, and they swear and they and good luck to the rest of their life anyway. But I thought, okay, it's time to destigmatize ghost stories and the paranormal. If my guests can, open that up a bit more.
Let me touch on that. So when people who believe in a deity, and you can call it God, Yahweh, Allah, whatever you want to call that entity, okay, or that divinity, right? When they laugh at people like us who believe in other forms of life, because that's what we're talking about. We're basically talking about other sentient energies that we don't understand because we can't see them, feel them, talk to them, touch them, right? Well, hello. You believe in a God or a deity that you've never sat down and have lunch with, and that you're reading from a scroll, a book, whatever it is that is thousands of years old and that's been manipulated over millennia, right? And I am not poo-pooing anybody's religious beliefs. What I'm saying to you is you basically believe in another dimension just like us, because heaven, hell, earth, those are 3 dimensions. Well, I don't care who you are, you cannot get away. Those are dimensional portals, dimensional worlds. So what we're saying, and I think in essence what you're saying is like, if it's all under the same umbrella, and if there is a Bigfoot and there is ET and there is, mystical beings and things like that, they exist, but they just exist out of a place that we can't see them. And I think there is a reason. And again, it goes back to my book, because I think we have veiled ourselves because of all the evil that we have created as a species, as Homo sapiens. We have cut ourselves off from our divinity, from our
I agree. I want to come back again. I mean, also we're talking about, and I can only talk from the religion that I was raised in, not strict, I might add. Is that when I studied comparative religions and when I was on Christianity, the Bible contains all these spirit beings coming down to earth and impregnating women or giving messages. And as a child, I'd say, well, you're saying I've got schizophrenia because I talk to the dead, but in the book, your book, they're talking to the dead, and it just wasn't accepted, obviously, and brushed to one side and drugged to the eyeballs. So for me, it's demystifying it. No, I'm going to say decriminalizing it as well.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, we would have been burnt at the stake or ducked in the pond or any other.
So what does that tell you? That tells you that, first of all, when we were hunters, I'll go back. When we were hunters and gatherers roaming the earth and living off like the herds and raw plants and everything, we didn't have religion, but we did have reverence for the earth and respect. And we lived our life. The Egyptians is a great example. Preparation for death. You live a really good life. Your heart gets weighed against a feather. If it's lighter than a feather, you ascend. If it's not, guess what? You get to come down and do this shit again. It's the same. It's the same thing. And people, they've weaponized religion in order to control us. And
I think it was to hide the truth of who we are. One part of it, one tiny part. I mean, there's multiple things going on at the moment, so we're not going to go there. We're staying on the spirit and ghosts and the paranormal. It was to suppress the truth, suppress for us, to brainwash us, to control us by fear. So we never, ever had an inkling of who we truly are. However, many of us came in a highly sixth sense or psychic or something, and they couldn't suppress that. So that's why it has grown. And now there's even a break from the spiritual churches as well. Independent mediums going out by themselves. It's breaking away from the dogma, the laws. You can do this, you can't.
The judgment.
Sorry?
The judgment.
The judgment. That if you do, there is still, there's still a lot of judgment. If you speak to dead people, you've got to do it this way. No, you do it your way. You're so all of that judgment, but it's not coming from it's still controlled. In the UK, spiritual mediumship is allowed. Yeah, it won't burn you at the stake. However, only if you put it under entertainment. So have
you ever seen a TV evangelist in the United States? Now that's entertainment.
Yeah. I've seen them years ago. Actually, I've seen them and I've just gone, what the fuck? Anyway, apart from that, that's all I could say, and then switch it over. So now we've done the background to where we're going and coming into the ghost stories that the podcast will share. And I've used the ghost stories because we're all trying to use new terminologies now, but sometimes we've got to hold on to one so we can gently go in the door. They recognize ghost stories or paranormal. Through the ghost stories, many people, I haven't read all the emails yet, but I'm talking in general as a medium, and it's been my life. Many people that have experienced ghosts, because they have not been allowed to have an understanding what they are, what it's about, then they've taken on another's belief and demonized it, so to speak. Does that resonate with you? You see how that goes? My case, I'm not a platform medium, it's a rescue medium. So, for example, they go on about, we got poltergeists, they're throwing this, they're doing that. Yeah, they're actually, a spirit is trying to get your attention. There's some traumatic thing going on. You need someone to come in and work with that. But they demonize it. Have you, I'm not talking about your experience, the one you sent me. You're not allowed to go there, okay? But do you recognize that's happened in the world of mediumship and ghost stories?
That society has demonized the abilities of a medium, or that the fact that they're...
No, the fact is, all right, let me just try to give you a polarity. When you hear of stories of poltergeists and they're demonized as demon, okay? When from a rescue medium's perception, I'm not talking about the dark stuff, but it's a spirit in the spirit realm trying to communicate. An example is...
and they're demonizing the spirit.
They're demonized, and this is how the control is still going on today. But it's also the misperception of the individual that's experiencing the ghost, so to speak. And I'm going to elaborate that on a bit more. I know it's long and drawn out. A couple of years ago, I went into a home and there was something going on, and they were scared, couldn't sleep, and because of this person by their bed for years, and had to get someone to sleep with them. But when I went in and I saw the gentleman, long story short, he was there to protect her from something else, and I won't go into it. And everything shifted in for that female. Never had to sleep with another person again, but she thought, due to the demonization and everything that was going on, it was a negative experience. That's what I'm trying to get to. What I'm hoping in the future of the podcast that the guest, not me, will open that up. Does that resonate with you? So now I'm coming back and saying, have you had an experience, but not the one you sent me, where you've experienced something at first and got a bit scared or fearful, but then later on realized it wasn't what you thought it was?
I think initially when I like I said, from about the time I was 4, I knew that I was unique because I could see things and feel things, and I had a knowing of people, when I met them. Like I could size somebody when I was 5, and I knew instantly pretty much like yay or nay, like they're good or they're not. And I believe that is a gift, and it's helped me tremendously through my life. The experiences that I've had, and this is where I think that they've weaponized fear, because it's fear of what we don't understand that keeps us from accepting the reality that is presented to us. Does that make sense to you? So
absolutely.
When I've had experiences at first in different places when I was much younger, I thought, well, that's got to be a demon or the devil or whatever, because as you know, I was taught that there's, if you see anything paranormal, it's the devil, and that's it. And so that weaponization of that subject precludes people to go into a situation with this negative view on what's going on, and therefore they don't have the wherewithal or the ability to have their mind open enough to really look at that situation. Like, what is really going on? Like, are you being touched or handled? Are pictures falling on you when you sleep? Are you being shoved down a flight of stairs? Now, I'm not going to say that there are no negative entities out there, because there are. There are, but there's plenty of light as well. So I have not myself gone into a situation. I've had a few dark situations happen with me living in places that were and I have been personally attacked, and my children have been attacked. But I have had very benevolent, loving, experiences as well. So, like people, I think it really just depends on the situation.
I mean, go back to what your podcast is going to be about, like the word ancient wisdom. Back in the day, they didn't have this fear of spirit. Even if they were mischievous spirits, they were fully aware it was consciousness playing the role of the experience of mischief. So, but they knew how to deal with that, just like rescue mediums today do when they go in. They specialize in that field, and they can disperse it, and it's of no threat to the rescue medium either. They don't fear it. So, do you feel like coming in the era we are now? In ancient times, it was natural to see spirit, to communicate, and if there were mischievous ones, they would banish them. It was easily done. And today, what do we call it? Protection. When you protect yourself and ground yourself, and with love or light.
Exorcisms, things like that. Well, what has happened in the last 2,000 years? We've been conditioned by religion. And so we have this natural assumption now through thousands of years of genetic programming from our ancestors 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, with the Abrahamic and other religions, that, automatically the assumption is that it's bad. Right.
But don't you say, for me, I keep going, well, okay, they say it can't be true. The dead can't come back to life. I said, well, what about Jesus? Didn't he come back after 3 days?
That's a scientific answer, and let me give it to you this way. We can't create life.
No.
We can't create energy. Energy just is. And energy never dies. So if you come into this existence and you're living, right? When this dies, this has to go somewhere. It's the law of nature. It's cosmic law. Like that energy doesn't die. So
I agree with you, but why is it okay for Jesus to come back, his energy, but the church says no one else can come back?
Well, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Hello. I mean, it's like, okay, you can believe this portion of recycled energy. They want to equate that, but that's it. The 99% of reality that happens doesn't really exist. It's just in your imagination. Only this one instance of recycled energy is permitted. That's just ludicrous. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers crazy that people subscribe to, like, okay, only Jesus is allowed to come back. Well, who says?
That's what I say. Who says?
If God created us in His image and gave us free will and within ourselves to have everlasting lives, that tells you, if you believe in that tells you that you already know that you're going to exist after this life in death, whether in that paradigm you go up or down, depends on what you do now, right? But that's telling you your energy doesn't die.
Exactly.
So
I mean, for the audience or anyone that's going to listen in, or even on your own podcast, I'm sure this will be raised at some point, is the fact is, when you look at it, you know, with our programming of it's bad, it's no good, I just say, well, Jesus come back, so why can't our mothers, our fathers, and there's another aspect to the spirit world. What it does, what it started off originally to do, from my truth, is to give proof, because it was so scientific in the Victorian times, in the 1800s. It was science, science, science. The funny thing was, it also kicked off spirituality, was to prove life after death. Not that we need that now, obviously, but back in the day, that's where it come from. And so at the moment, and I don't know about you, but my as a medium, as you know, I sort of closed it down for some time to do the shows and all the other stuff I'm doing. But my God, it's coming back more and more and more. And everyone I meet is talking about ghosts, some experiences going on in the house, just ones that you wouldn't even think were going to speak about this. Have you been aware of the energies more? You're feeling more spirit, whether it be your family members or others, or when you walk into a place? I mean, we are going to come to the house you and Chris just got. We will get there. We will get there. And we will blame Chris, not you. Okay.
yeah, he picked it out.
So have you found that I'm not talking ET now at the moment. Have you found the spirit world it's sort of like vibrating? I don't know what the word is, but more and more and more, and more's coming through. Have you experienced it?
Well, okay, that's a really loaded and
No pressure.
multi-dimensional question. So I want to address your answer.
Yeah.
I don't believe so much that spirit comes back. I believe that it's our ability as an individual to communicate with them, to sense them, right? So,
yeah, I know it. I agree. Yeah.
But there are places like the home I live in now that there are definitely things that are here that are here. So that in that case, spirit or energy did come back. Okay. And it's here, right? But like if I communicate with like my brother or my sister or my grandmother, which I was close to all of them, you know, it's not that they're coming back to haunt or anything. I'm able to communicate with them because I have a honed gift that everybody's capable of, but I just have, it's like I can't play piano, but I can play chopsticks on the piano, right? So some people can play chopsticks and like feel stuff like inklings and like hairs in the back of the neck. And then other people like me can actually communicate with them. So it's kind of the same thing on that. Now, when you're talking about the frequencies and things like that, there's so much going on in the world right now with 5G, right? With our electrical magnetic fields being pulled because of the, you know, our solar system, the planets are starting to align in alignment we haven't seen since 79 AD. You know, so there's a lot of other factors that I think are kind of messing with the vibrations that we've become used to in the last couple of thousand years. And it's getting some people that are maybe extra sensitive to it.
Yeah.
Almost like, I hate to say this, but almost like an electrical magnetic allergy that causes you to be able to tune into a frequency that other people can't because they don't have that allergy. Does that make sense to you?
No, honestly, it really does make sense. I want to correct a word. I think there's a confusion in the word, in the English word I use, coming back. And I meant it in a different context. So I'm British English or American English. I'm going to rephrase that. When I say coming back, I meant, how can I put this? In in masses returning on this timeline. Okay. Does that make sense to you now? I've used different linguistics, so I apologize for using the wrong. I just presumed you would understand what I'm saying in the context of it, but that's my fault. So coming back, and I agree with you. People have, how can I put this? With the energies that are going on Earth, let's say the negative Nellies trying their damnedest but failed 100% to stop what has happened. In fact, it's been beneficial for people, for these frequencies to be going. And you're correct. It's like, vroom, antennas coming on. And I don't think, well, they didn't anticipate that would occur. Does that make sense? I'm trying to go in coded words here so we stay on the air. Does that make sense to you? Because you just described that when all the 5G went up and all this and all that stuff. Everyone says, oh, it's to damp us down. But I'm seeing in my timeline, boom, and connection to spirit. People are saying to me, I've got shadow people walking, and it's just, they've never experienced this before. So that's what I'm trying to address now. Like, it's a great tone.
In my book, I call it the shivers. I call it the shivers of the earth realm, which enables the shadow realm, which is in my book, to send energies into the world and affect us. And I cannot believe something I've started 14 years ago before I even knew anything about history, before I even interested. But I didn't even, I mean, I knew I was, like, I could read tarot card. I said, you know, I had feelings. I knew my kids were misbehaving and doing stuff they weren't supposed to, catch them all that. I knew all of this, but I wouldn't recognize it, right? I wouldn't own it because I was told it was bad my whole life. So now that I've owned it and I've kind of come into my own, I look back on this and I go, holy shit. Like this book I wrote 14 years ago, started 14 years ago.
It's happening now.
It parallels exactly what's going on
now. It's happening now. I mean, you know, the core reason why I've got the podcast coming out and while we're having this discussion is it's going to be the norm. In fact, the word paranormal is not even going to, it's going to be the norm. It's the energy, whether it's ET, whether it's dimensional beings, whether it's angelic, elementals, whatever you're experiencing, it's going to become the norm. And so demystify, decriminalize, and try and take the fear out of the experience, to try and, you know, understand the experience, what actually is something that we were, I don't want to say ordained, but part of the new timeline we will experience. I mean, I'm hearing it from people talking about the Hopi predictions.
The fifth world.
Yeah, everything, Mayans, everything about the spirits coming back. It actually is in Christianity, but worded in a very negative way, when the dead return, so to speak.
Like, I hate to say this because this is such a, but I'm just going to bring up this movie. Look at who you are now 40 years ago to where you were 40 years ago, and then watch the Ghostbusters, the first one.
Yeah.
Right? Because 40 years ago, we were in that societal coma.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a picket fence. I have 2.5 kids. I'm a yuppie living in the suburbs with a nice house. I have 2 cars. I get to vacation once a year with my kids. Everything's perfect in my little box. Hey, it's entertainment. The spirits and energies are coming back, and this is fun. Let's kill it all. Let's control it, right? Because that's what man tries to do. We try to exercise our control over all facets of the universe. And here's spoiler alert for your viewing audience here. We don't control shit. Nothing. The only thing we control is our reaction to said circumstance.
Absolutely.
If you can get that into your brain, and you can try to pick away at the brick and mortar that has been, like, you know, put over your pineal gland, and peel that away and let your soul feel all the energies around you, your world will open up.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
I love this conversation. You know, April can talk about any topic with me. We discuss all different topics off camera, you know, just video chats, and we can discuss anything. And that's how it's going to be on this timeline. Anyone can discuss anything, and we can just go for it. Now, what I want to do now, on the back of that, is let's talk about the home that Chris Matthew decided you should live in. We're blaming Chris. Start from the beginning.
Well, so Chris and I have been together for a couple months, and I moved to Colorado to be with him, and I moved from Texas, and we were looking around. We looked at a few places, and it's funny because we stayed in an Airbnb for a week. It was a little house we rented, you know, while we looked around this area, and that place was so haunted. It was crazy, and I picked that one out. That was my fault, but it was pictures, you know. It was like little house in the 40s, and we had some experiences in that house, but we looked around and we saw this house, and he actually found it, and we came and met it, and I walked in, and I was like, huh. And I look at him and I go, we're not going to be alone here, right? Like this is this is very charged. What do you feel about this? And he was enamored by the house. He would just like, I want to live here. I love it. It's a big old 1890s house, and it's great. It's got little cool like cubbies and little tiny doors and weird rooms, and it's just very quirky house. And so immediately, like I think probably the first or second night, we heard footsteps upstairs, coming down the stairs. We had footsteps walking, doors shutting. It almost sounded like something either moving in or out upstairs.
Yeah.
We don't really occupy. We kind of sit on the main level and then in studios downstairs.
Yeah.
So we have heard, I mean, it has sounded like things crashed. And, we go check, there's nothing out of order. We definitely have heard, I have of late, I'm going to say since I've been back from Florida for about a week or 5-6 days, I have seen like shadows kind of at the corner of my eye, kind of like walking by me and stuff. And I know a lot of people that are in this field of work will say, ooh, shadows aren't good. And I'm not saying they're shadow beings. What I'm saying is I can catch something out of the corner of my eye. But by the time I turn, it's gone. So I don't necessarily think they're shadows. I just think it's like a feeling, and then I see visually, I see something like crossing like that.
Well, I mean, the word shadow being, it depends in which context you use it. And because myself, that I've seen them all my life, and people in my groups, the mediums you can't describe them. They move so quick. It's like you just see like a shadow, a reflection of a movement. So shadow being is not to be taken in with a negative connotation. It's just it moves so quick.
And that goes back to our conversation before. The assumption that it's bad. So what I did a lot of meditating. I have a little room upstairs that I'm putting together as my little yoga studio, and my little like meditation room. And it's when you go upstairs, it's not a stair like a typical staircase. It's kind of a weird, like really, I don't even know how to describe it. It's really odd. But you go up and there's this little room on the left, which has got like eaves, it's A-frame, and then on the right there's like a huge room. Also A-frame, but bigger. And then there's a room that goes off like a bedroom there. So what I think is happening is that is and this is what I feel, what my guides have told me. It's an interdimensional hallway between two portholes. And there are beings that are coming in and going out and coming back in and going out. And that is what I think we hear, the movement and shuffling and the doors opening and closing. And we've woken up to the doors being open when we know we've shut them. There's no windows open because it's winter, so it's cold, so we don't have the windows open. So our dogs sleep with us in the bed, so it's not the dogs, running around upstairs. So there is definitely activity. My dog, my little dog Charlotte, the first I'll say week we were here, she'd wake up, I'd wake up, she'd be shivering, in the middle of the night, and she'd be staring at the door because we leave our door open. And she'd be staring at the door, and I'd be, it's okay. And she was frozen in fear of like, but now I don't feel like we're being watched so much because I think that they know, that we're okay. So they kind of leave us alone, but we definitely still hear them and everything.
I mean, it's a case, there are many cases of houses. It's either echo energy of past things, and that's all it is. Or when you do go in and there's spirit beings there, there's spirits there, and they just want to check you out. What type of human are you? And do you resonate with me? Because if you don't, there's going to be a lot of noise. I agree with you. It normally does settle down, and you just let them. I mean, spirits are, this, but spirits with us 24/7, and many spirits. You don't have to tune into every single one, but you don't go through the street going, no, it's just they're there, you're aware, and they check you out, and then they go. Sometimes they don't, and then you have to do something about that. I hear you. But what you just said then about the two doors and going through reminded me, I recently left the mainland. I went to an island off the UK, and I stayed in this Victorian dead house. That's all I'm going to say. It was just full of them. And when I was going over, I shut myself down because I wanted to go and just enjoy being human. It was spiritual, and shut it down. I'm not doing no medium shit, fatal. And outside my room, I had a great big grand master bedroom converted, bay windows. It was on the promenade. Didn't need a light on because of the sea and the lights were outside, and everything. And then the first thing I noticed, this is for me, the first thing I noticed the first night was out in the building was all sensory lights. So you had to be a human to catch it, or a dog or a cat. They turn on, and when you went past seconds, they turned off. And I noticed under the door the light going on, and I knew straight away they were out there trying to get my attention. And they light go on, light go off. So I saw them walking past, and they were the servants going up the back stairwell to the top floor to the, who served the household. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing they did on my door, when I told my son-in-law this, he said I would have been out the fucking building like a shot. And they started the tapping at the door. And I knew they were trying to do the door handle, but they couldn't. And I just went, I'm not doing it. I'm so used to it. Then I rolled over and went to sleep. So in these cases we're talking about, from your case or my case, if you don't fear it, where I'm going with this, and just allow it to go on, long as it doesn't trouble you, long as there's no harm, don't put up that wall of fear and, it's a demon, it says. And normally it will subside, and they did generally subside. They still kept walking past. None of my business. I let them get on in their dimension, and I got on in mine. It was a bit tricky, though, when they turned on the fucking shower in the middle of the night. And I just went, fuck, I'm not fucking doing it. And I went back. And that was it. I didn't respond. So it looks like that you're actually, you and Chris, you're doing the same thing, just allowing them to get on, no fear.
Yeah, I mean, I think, everything in life happens, that everything in life happens for a reason. There's a lot of people that you'll read stories like, oh, well, I got in a really bad car accident and went to the hospital. They x-rayed me and I found out I had stage 3 cancer in my whatever, because they had, didn't have any symptoms, right? I liken that to what you're saying is your perception of that car accident initially was awful because you totaled your car, you had to go to the hospital, it was traumatic. Then you find out that you have cancer and it saved your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think honestly, 99% of everything is perception. It's what we intend on giving that said circumstance, that attention, that, and if you approach everything from a fear base, then you're going to get a negative reaction.
You're going to create it. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
That fear. I mean, and touching on that, I don't know if you experienced this as well. When I was a child, I was being highly psychic. But because I was in such a torturous environment, things would start moving in the room, flying across things around. And I've always known I did that. It was just my energy, my frustration, my energy, and it was me. And I would go around and say, don't anger me. Please don't anger me, because something would happen if someone got me cross. I didn't understand it as a child. I didn't understand. I knew it was me. But I had no discernment about it. However, later down the line, and all the studies that go on, teenage, especially females, girls at that stage, the energy, when you go through the hormonal change, and if you're already quite psychic and seeing dead people and doing stuff, it works in a way that you're maturing into the adult, but you can't control it. But many people say you're possessed. There's a poltergeist, and I'd say, I'm not fucking possessed. And there is no other being throwing things around. It was my energy attracting this display. Does that make sense to you, what I've just said?
Yes, absolutely. And again, it goes back to energy. We can't create it. We can't, we can't manipulate it.
No.
We can't, I mean, sure. And like anything else, if you go looking for trouble, if you go in and you worship, the dark arts and you call stuff in,
you're going to get them.
You're going to get them. I mean, and if you fear a benevolent ghost who is trying to communicate with you for whatever reason in a restaurant, in your home, it doesn't really matter, and you fear that to the point of like, oh my God, you're the devil, you're gonna piss it off or irritate it, and you're gonna create an animosity that really doesn't need to be there. And
totally agree.
And we're talking about, if we look at this, if you look at this from a practical standpoint, where let's say I am a Christian and I because I grew up Southern Baptist, and I fear all of these things because I was taught that they are dark and they're bad and they're not there to help me, they're there to hurt me, right? And I go through life, anything that's out of that box that I was put in, that I believe in, anything that happens to me outside of that box is going to be viewed as bad, or I'm going to fear it, right? The moment you unwrap that box and you see like the world the way it is, you understand that we're talking about 100%, whether it's Bigfoot, ET, spirits from the other side, energy. And just because we don't understand dimensional travel or other dimensions or our perceptions, we only see 7 colors on the spectrum, right? Just because we don't understand something doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean it's out there to hurt us.
Absolutely. I know, I'm in total agreement. I mean, I used to say years ago, if I fear anything, I fear Homo sapiens sapien more than spirit, because spirit can't physically do anything to me at all. If I don't fear it and I have an understanding of who it is and the respect for it. It was a Homo sapiens sapien. It was an energy being, came in the form to play the human, had the experience, and then shifted to wherever it needs to go. I'd say, if I'm walking down a dark alley, I'm looking behind me. I don't fear, but I'm aware and alert. I don't have that with spirit. There is nothing to fear. I agree with you again totally. If you go into the dark arts, if you go down that road, you create your reality. Whatever you fear, you will, feed it back to you. The universe will say, okay, this is what you want. The universe, or the greater consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, God, it doesn't really matter, or the program, it doesn't know right or wrong or up or down anything. Whatever you in your electromagnetic field, by the way, as you stated earlier, whatever you put out will attract back to you, magnetize. So it just, for anyone, if you're really going through anything like this and you're not sure, you don't do, just drop the fear. Nothing can harm you.
And I say to people, don't say, well, I don't want this, or I don't want, it's like when I made the list up for a man I wanted to meet eventually, this was like in 2019, 2020, I made this list up of all the qualities that I wanted this person to have. Same belief system, kind, blah, 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 blah. And I was single for a long time. And then I met Chris. So I didn't say, I don't want an asshole. I don't want somebody who beats me. I don't want an alcoholic. I said, I want this, and this. And then I
precise.
Yeah. So you have to be understanding, like, what is it honestly that you are putting out? What is it that you fear? Because even that residual fear that lies in the back of your brain, that you're like, well, I really hope this isn't a evil thing, or I really, I'd be really, you're still drawing that energy to you. It's still because our subconscious controls 95% of our waking day. So subconsciously you're fearing like what you don't want, and that is what it's emitting out to the universe. So and this isn't like I woke up one day and I said, hey, I'm going to have an epiphany, and my entire life is going to change, and I'm going to believe in energies, and I'm going to believe in positive thinking and self-manifestation and self-actualization, and I'm going to disperse all the old fear and all the dogma. And it took me years.
Decades. Took me decades.
Yeah.
You're young enough to say years. Me, decades. I agree with you. 100%.
But if anybody is experiencing a haunting, okay, whether it's a personal haunting, something attached to them, or if it's a structural haunting, work, home, whatever, the biggest, best advice I can give them is this. If you aren't a practicing medium, or you're not in that arena, don't antagonize it. Don't say, well, show yourself or anything like that,
Oh God, no.
Don't piss it off,
Yeah.
Don't fear it, because it feeds off of that, and there are negative things out in the world. Let's just face it, there are. We know that.
Well, you can go in a pub and meet someone and you don't know that they're a serial killer. Come on.
Exactly. So you want to give it reverence and respect.
Yeah.
And you want to say, this is what I said here. I said, look, I know you're here. I'm merely a guest in your home. You've been here for a very long time. And I'm going to treat this with reverence and respect. And you're going to see that. And that's what we've done. And we haven't had any like major issues.
Yeah.
Now, if I'd come in here with a EK, a machine that
guns blazing and machines and
and trying to film it and capitalize on it, I think that the outcome would be drastically different, honestly.
Yeah.
But you know what? They have their little passageway up there. They do their thing and they leave us alone, and I'm cool with it.
Absolutely. No, I hear you on that. And there's another point to it coming from, who we are. We're we say consciousness or source, having the human experience. We're here to experience. So people say, well, why are they here? Well, we're here to experience them. And you're not, and the human experience is not going to get away with not experiencing it by blocking it. Our consciousness are here to experience all things at all times and all places. And this timeline, it's like all coming in, boom, 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 boom. And the whole point is to experience it as another experience. I mean, for anyone that hasn't, is not a medium, you may not, you will understand eventually, or maybe understands, you may have a better resonance with it, or discernment, using discernment, grasp it better when having a spirit communication is a joyous thing. It's the end, is it not? When you're communicating, you're getting this information. I'm blown away because I couldn't make this shit up. And it's the healing you give to a live being, so to speak, could save a life. I mean, there's been many cases where
I've channeled before, and that's happened. So and I didn't even mean to channel. I didn't know I was doing it when I did it, but that's happened before. So I mean, it's like anything. It all goes back to the same thing in life. Anything you put energy into a situation or a person, you're going to get that back out.
Absolutely. There were so many benefits to it. Many cases over the years of someone's lost a loved one. They're actually near suicide. They can't live without them because they don't know if life after death exists, and it's just grief. I'm not talking about the charlatans out there. And they just sometimes just need a message or something, or they sense it, they feel it, and it shifts and allows them to grieve and allows them to hold that love in their heart. There were so many what we call ghost stories, which I suppose in the experience that I had with spirit, one could call them ghost stories, but there was always an outcome, a knowing, a learning from each experience you go through. I mean, it's like, and that is doing the work on yourself. Like you've just said it. When you come in, it was like, ooh, we're here. But because you allowed it respectfully, and you've learned how to live with that without it causing you problems. And same for me when I went to the dead house on the Isle of Wight. Not that I'll ever go back there. I would never live there. No, there's too many of them. It's expanding us to accept everything that comes. I think another thing about Homo sapiens sapiens, where we've been programmed back at ancient times, it wasn't like this. We like our own space. We don't like to share it with anybody. But you'll find mediums like yourself, well, they can walk through. They don't bother me. They're happy. I get on with my life. Until in the end, it doesn't matter that they're there. Does that make sense to you? That you just allow these beings to be who they are. And I do agree with you. You start telling them, get out. Well, they were there first, by the way, if you just moved in the house. And some of these spirits as well aren't even aware that they've passed. Now, that is the case. They're not aware, like in the Victorian place I stayed on the island, they were going to work. up and down the stairs. Do you think I was going to go out there and do rescue mediumship? No way. There was too many. You'd need a horde of mediums in there. It was that intense there. They don't know they've passed. That's another area that people are not aware of.
Right. Yeah, I sometimes, if from what I understand it, and I've experienced a couple of spirits like that in my life, but if somebody is murdered or they die in a like a car accident or something like that, and they're like, what? Like, I'm dead. I just watched a special. What was it? Unsolved Mysteries. It's the new Unsolved Mysteries. And I think it's on Netflix. And it's interesting because they did this whole segment on the tsunami in Japan.
Yeah.
And how the spirits of the tsunami have affected different families in Japan. If you haven't seen that,
no, I don't have Netflix. I don't have it.
Oh, it is incredible because there's this one lady, she's a medium, and she's a Japanese medium. She's driving down the street, and this is how I'll try to relate to what you asked me. And she sees this group of 4 young guys, and they're like waving her down, and they're like, we need to get home. We're lost. We can't get home now. Understand that the face of that whole area is completely changed. It was completely devastated. There's a lot of buildings that were there are gone, apartment buildings, businesses, all this, and they couldn't find their way back home. Well, they were swept away in the tsunami, and they were all dead. And they didn't know they were dead. And she said, I had a choice. I couldn't let these people suffer anymore and think that, they're just lost in this perpetual abyss trying to get home, and their home's no longer there. They don't know they're dead. He had to tell them, I'm sorry to tell you guys, but you're dead.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean we're dead? Like, we died. There was a tsunami and we died in it. And I think it's a great, you could have feared that. In fact, it's such a prevalent happening in that area that the taxi drivers give free rides to ghosts because they have a reverence for the dead and the and they don't want to accept them and let them know that they're dead. So they have to pay for the fares that they pick up and take them to different parts of that in Japan. And I have, oh my gosh, I have goosebumps all over. I
mean,
that's crazy.
But that's how it should be.
Right.
This is what I'm saying. It should be like that. It's been like that. In my whole human experience has been normal like that. And this is how it should be. I haven't got what's the program called?
It's Unsolved Mysteries, but they did you probably could get it on YouTube. They did it on the tsunami victims in Japan.
Okay, I'll try and look it up. I'd love something like that because
they have doctors, medical nurses, psychologists. It barely didn't even have any paranormal stuff on it. It was all medical, clinical, and all of these people were like, yes, this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's, this is what I was saying earlier on when I had to, rephrase my thing. Like, they are returning. It's more prevalent now, and more people are becoming aware of them. And I didn't know about this program on Netflix. That just goes to show. But that also links into what I mentioned earlier. In ancient times, it was just like that. That's how they would be if they saw a spirit, someone who'd passed and didn't know they died. I mean, I've done it there was one guy, oh God, it was way back. And I saw him stood by he had a caravan and on his caravan, and his table and everything and whatever. And someone, you need to tell him. And, and I remember, I don't remember much about it now, but I remember walking up to him and saying, oh, you've been shopping? Hi, you've been shopping? He went, yeah. And I said, oh, and I saw the Tesco card, club card. And I went, oh, wow. And because I know what to do to take them back to where they were last, to go back to, and I'm so pleased that I'm going to have to try and find, I don't have Netflix. I'll try and find it on YouTube. I'm so pleased that it's still going on today. But this is what the whole point of my podcast will be about, is to share these ghost stories, to show people you're not the only one that have these ghost stories or paranormal experiences, but also to bring in, I will be inviting the audience to email, what do you think about this? Have you experienced this? What do you think is happening? So like me and you have just discussed now what we think is happening, and it's to open this more broadly to a greater audience.
I've got a really good story to illustrate your point.
Go on then.
My ex-husband, this is about 8-9 years ago. I loved his father. His father was in his early 80s, great guy, would walk those, 9 holes of golf every single day, in great shape, ate well, didn't drink, great guy.
Yeah.
Loved him. Loved him. So my ex-husband was a fly fisherman, and he would go to Oregon every year. He would go fly fishing for a week with all of his buddies. They'd go. He had like a put together raft, and they would hike up, and they would go down the rapids, and they would pick their spot in the Oregon terrain and stuff, and they would go fly fishing. I had a really bad feeling about him going fly fishing. So I begged him. I'm like, "Is there any way you would reconsider not going on this trip? I don't have a good feeling." And he said, no, we've, the money's paid, I'll be fine. You kind of shooed my abilities anyway. So I was really nervous. And like the first night goes by, it's okay. So the second night I have this dream, and in the dream, so he used to get up and go to bed or go to work at 4 a.m. every day. And obviously I was still sleeping. And so every morning he would come in, he would sit down, he'd, kiss me, and he'd say, "Love you, have a good day." And then he'd go off to work. And if you looked from my bed to the doorway, you would see the backlight of like the kitchen light on. So then you would see a silhouette come to the door. Right. So in my dream, it's my husband. He's coming back, and he's in the doorway. He comes around on the bed, and I feel the bed decompress, and I feel a kiss on my forehead. And I thought to myself, I'm dreaming this. I thought, that's weird. He's kissing my forehead and not, my lips. He never does that. And he looks at me and he goes, "April, I have to go now, but I want to say goodbye and I love you." And I got this really bad feeling in my pit of my stomach. And I'm like, "What do you mean you have to go now?" And I said, "Going to work." He says, "I have to go now. It's time for me to go because I just want you to know how much I love you." And I had this fear gripping me in my dream, and I was like, "Don't go. Call into work sick today. Stay home with me. You don't have to go, And I woke up bawling. I had tears running down. It was like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, crying, right? So I pick up the phone because I know this is a dream about my husband's death. I know he was dead. Now they're out in the rugged terrain. There's no signal out there. So I call like till 7 o'clock in the morning. Finally, I fall back asleep. Calls me, and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Are you okay?" I was, "I'm fine. Are you okay?" Because we just headed down around the first bend and everything. And I, taking a break to call you because you called so many times. I'm like, "No, I'm fine. I just really have a bad feeling. Please be careful." I was relieved that he was alive because I really thought it was him.
Yeah.
Well, about 4 or 5 hours later, I get a phone call from him, and he's quiet. He goes, "April," and I knew, I knew something was wrong. And he goes, "My father passed away last night." He's like, the neighbors found him this morning. They say he died around 4 o'clock in the morning. They took his body and everything. They said it was cold, but there was, I guess, the rigor mortis, whatever. He'd been dead for so many hours by the time they found him. They're estimating. It was about the time he came to visit me. And it looked just like my husband, right? And I just broke down and I was bawling, right? Well, it turns out when we were cleaning out his estate, we had found this cache of like old newspaper articles because he was a fishing game scientist. He had his PhD in fisheries, and he was a fishery for the state. And there was this picture of him, in flannel, baseball cap, full beard, like my ex-husband had. It was, they were twins.
Yeah.
Picture.
Yeah.
And this is how he chose to show himself to me, so it wouldn't freak me out.
Yeah.
Older 83-year-old Bob coming, it was 44-year-old Bob.
Yeah, they'll bring them in young. They'll come in younger if they have to. They will come in younger.
So my point to that story is, I knew he was going to die. I knew there was a part of my husband that was going to die that day, and he did. And he came back to say goodbye to me, and I knew it. Right. Not a bad thing to fear, right? That's not a bad thing.
That's different.
So he came back to say goodbye, and I got to give my husband, I told my husband this because I told him about the dream in the morning, and then when he called me that afternoon, he was like, "Holy shit, it wasn't me, it's my dad."
Yeah.
I mean
that, the fear that you felt in the dream there, that fear is grieving. It's love.
Yes.
Grief is just love. that fear we call it fear. It's not, it's love, and it's grieving the loss of,
Right.
and that hurts. That's one of the hardest Homo sapiens sapien emotions to work through.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, after the fact that he came and said goodbye, that's love.
Yeah.
What could be demonic about that?
Nothing.
Nothing at all. And even people that aren't, that say, I don't believe in ghosts, but do you know, my mum come and saw me in a dream, or my dad, or my brother, or my dog. I'm going, hello. It's normally, for most, I think, unless you're a medium or psychic to that extent, they come in the dreams and people don't realize what's actually happening. Or someone will say, oh, it's just psychological, you ate too much cheese, or your mind created it. But they do come in the dream state because it's an easy state to access us when we're asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And, imagine that if you'd been in a conscious state. So he knew how to approach you. They knew the state you needed to be in. Because you said he made himself younger. Yeah? Not to scare you. That is love. That's what we love. And that comes from spirit and so much more. You can even find things as well, by the way. They can tell you where things are. And they do help. And they actually help on many cases when things go missing. If some do help. So there's many benefits. So hopefully we've dispelled the fears that many have on ghost stories or the paranormal. And I can't thank you enough for your contribution to the show. That's been and you know what's nice? We talk about everything. It's so nice to talk about some topics totally different again. It's with you. And to the audience, I'm going to say to this young lady, where can anyone get hold of you for your podcast in the future? Or is there going to be a link up, or when's your book coming out? Anytime soon? Not that she's not busy.
I would say the book's probably not going to be until probably the fall. But the
hold on. What is the fall in the UK? We don't have that.
Oh, like
what's the month?
September, October.
Okay, winter here. We call it winter, the fall.
Okay, so September, October. And then the podcast is going to be airing next month. And if anybody wants to get hold of me, they can email me at theancientgift222@gmail.com. And it's just spelled out just like it sounds, the ancient gift 222. And yes, I did use 222 for a reason. So
and if you're out there and you're in, especially if you're in any of the fields that April spoke about, if it's your expertise and you'd like to get involved in these discussions she's going to have as well, the lay people, they will come as well. But I'm just saying, anyone out there would like to talk about this, it could be from theology, philosophy, psychology, it could be anything. If you're listening to this show, get hold of April at email again, darling.
theancientgift222@gmail.
There we go.
And if they're having any issues with anything we discussed, they can also email me, and I can put them in touch with people that can help them, most likely.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And on that note, lovely, it's been fantastic.
Yes, always.
Always. I love chatting with you. And to the audience, thank you for watching, whether you're watching it live. I know most of you watch on the rerun, and that's fine, because I like you to sit down, be comfortable, a nice cup of coffee. My name's Gloria, and this is Open Minds Chat Show. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thank you, Gloria. Bye.